Hi everyone, welcome to DIY Ideas. Today I'm going to show you how you can make an adjustable bow tie all on your own. You can use leftovers and it's super easy. So here is everything that we're going to need for today. So some basics as always, fabric scissors, pins, something to measure with. Here I also have a hand gauge. Then we have here some fabric chalk for marking. And of course thread matching the color of the fabric. And then here I have some hooks so that the adjustable band works later. Alternatively, you could use rings, but I'm going to show you with these little hooks how we can do the same thing. As far as the fabric goes, you can use pretty much anything you want, even silk if you want to try that out. You see here what I have. And if your fabric is a little bit thinner or just doesn't keep its shape and form, then you can use something to strengthen it. So I'm going to show you how we're going to get started with today's project. So we're going to need the bow part and then the band part that goes around the neck. So I'm going to do this twice so that I have a little bit more stable bow. And if your fabric is a little bit thicker, you can just stick with one layer, then that's going to be enough. So you see that I folded this over so that I have two layers and it's all nice and straight on here. So now I'm going to take my hand gauge and I'm going to measure 14 centimeters times 24 centimeters. So I added 1 centimeter on each side for the stitches, and then we can get to the marking so that we know where that is. Now we're also going to need the part that goes in the middle of the bow that kind of makes it in this bow shape. So now I'm going to do 6 centimeters times 10 centimeters for that. So this is of course with the added stitch room, so that means 1 centimeter on each side for the stitches. And then we're going to cut out the band that goes around the neck, so that's going to be a little bit narrower and a lot wider. So let's do the band that goes around the neck, so the longest and the narrowest part. So I'm going to measure my neck width and then I'm basically going to use that as my measure. I'm going to add a little bit of room for the stitches. And if you're using the hooks that I'm going to use, then I'm going to show you a really neat trick to make it adjustable. So we're going to use multiple hooks so that you can basically adjust the size depending on who's going to wear it. So you can do just one hook or just one ring, or you can do multiple and make it easier later. So I'm going to take about 50 centimeters in its width, and I'm going to take again 6 centimeters for the width. So I'm going to cut that out. So we have here everything that we need. So for the front of the bow, then the part that goes in the middle of the bow and makes it into a bow shape, so that we're going to kind of go around with, and then the longest piece is going to go for the neck section. So now we're going to start and put everything together. So now that we have all of the pieces cut out. So basically I'm going to do a tunnel first, or a little loop shape. So I'm going to fold this in half, the longest piece that goes around the neck, and I'm basically going to do an edge stitch or just a regular straight stitch as close to the edge as possible. And then I'm going to do that with all of them, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to continue after I'm done. So now that we have all of the pieces pinned, we can basically do a regular straight stitch across all of the edges, as close to the edge as possible. You can also do a seaming stitch to keep it in place if you'd like. So this is what they look like now that they have all of the necessary stitches. So you can see here I did kind of the seaming stitch so that it stays in place and doesn't fray later or do anything weird. So this is of course up to you which stitch you're gonna use. Anyway, I have all 4 done the exact same way. And now what we're gonna do is turn them inside out. So for the smaller pieces, you can use something like scissors that don't have a sharp edge, or you can use a safety pin, of course, and turn it inside out as you usually would with sewing projects. Okay, so now that we're done and everything is turned the right way around, we can get started with the next step. So for this, we're gonna need the 2 front pieces first. So I'm gonna use those and I'm gonna iron over this so that the stitch is on the middle on the inside. So that way it's not gonna be visible later when we have the finished bow tie. So you can do it, of course, on one or the other side. I like to do it in the middle, and by ironing over this, I just make sure that it stays in place. So that's gonna make everything easier from this point on. I also make sure that the stitch on the inside is always facing the same direction so that it doesn't wrinkle later, and just make sure that it's really straight. That's gonna make everything a lot easier. And then what we're gonna do when it's all nice and straight, we're gonna fold the 2 edges to the middle. They should meet right in the middle, and then we're gonna do a stitch right there. Of course, what you could do is fold them a little bit differently, so like this, and then do a stitch on the inside, and that way hide the stitch better, but I think it doesn't really matter because this little piece that we just did is gonna hide that section anyway. So we're gonna make it easy for ourselves, and we're basically just gonna fold one over the other, do a stitch in the middle, so just a regular straight stitch across, and then we're gonna have our first piece done, and we're gonna do the same with the other one. If you have thin fabric that doesn't really keep its shape, so in my case, it's gonna work, but in case you have just something that simply doesn't keep its shape and acts a little bit weird, then of course you can do here on the inside some extra fabric that's gonna help it keep its shape. So basically what you do is in the last step, you put some fabric on the inside and stitch it up with this stitch in the middle. And these are the 2 pieces now that we have the stitch across, and I'm gonna show you here that we have a little bit of fabric sticking out, and it's not gonna be a problem at all because it's gonna be hidden by this little piece that's gonna go in the middle. So here you have a lot of room to make mistakes, and it's not gonna be visible later, which is great. So now that we have these 2 pieces, we're gonna work on this little guy so that this looks nice and neat as well. So you see here, I also ironed over that so that it basically keeps its shape just like every other piece. So now what we're gonna do is basically take these 2 front pieces and we're gonna lay them one on top of each other and make sure that they're really nice, that they look good. So I want them to kind of fold twice, and I'm gonna try and show you what that's gonna look. So of course here you can work with it any way you like, but I like to fold it from the one side and from the other. I just think it looks really neat that way. And then we're gonna take our smallest piece, so that's gonna be our little band. This is of course after you're satisfied with the way the two bigger pieces look. So then we take the band and we go around with it basically. And we can do it multiple times here. It's gonna look even neater that way. And then we're gonna do here a little stitch in the back. So just make sure that the beginning and the end are in the back. Also, another cool trick is to do one stitch first, just with the beginning of the little band, then go around and do another stitch. That way you're gonna really make sure that everything stays in place and doesn't rip later on accident. So I'm gonna do this by hand just to make it a little bit easier. So now that I have the stripe here on the one edge, we can basically get to the folding again and we can just go around with the little band the way we want it to. So we're gonna go around a couple of times. And best case, you're gonna take this longest piece and already gonna stick it on the inside. That way it's gonna be a lot easier to work with it later. And you're gonna save one stitch. So just make sure that they're approximately the same length. So it should be a little bit overlapping, which means that it's not supposed to be completely equal on both sides. So both halves shouldn't be the exact same length. One should be just a tad longer than the other. And then we go around with this little piece and we can stitch it up with one stitch, and then we don't have to do two. Make sure that it's on the back, and then you can get started with, again, a regular sewing needle. I think it's a lot easier to do this step by hand. And then we're almost done. So now that we did the bow and that we have the stitch on the back, we can get to our last step, which is fixing these ends right here. So I would try this on right now and just look if it's fitting. If I have too much fabric, then I would cut it off. If I have too little, then of course it means I didn't plan well, but that shouldn't happen if you measure your neck size. So now what we're gonna do is basically go to the inside like this. So basically push the edge a little bit to the inside. It's gonna look a lot neater then. There we go. And then what we're gonna do is do a stitch right there to keep it that way too. And then when we're done, we can take one of our hooks that I showed you at the beginning of the video. You see them here in the background. So we're basically gonna find the spot that's perfect for, in my case, my neck size, and then you can do, of course, one or more on the sides. So when you're measuring your neck circumference or your neck width, of course, it matters if you're wearing something or not. So I definitely recommend putting on a shirt that you'd like to wear with this bow tie and then checking the size. So it's going to be a little bit more than just your naked neck, so to speak. So of course, as I said, we can do multiple hooks just to make sure that it fits, especially if you tend to lose and gain weight, so that way you're basically future-proofing it. Whichever way you go, you can still wear the bow tie. So as I said, here we have our little hooks that we're going to use, and that's what I'm going to do now. So as I said, I just did this little step on both sides, so I just pushed the ends to the inside and stitched over them to make sure they look really nice and neat. And now we're going to get to our hooks. So we need one hook, and we can have multiple of the other pieces that go with it. So I'm going to take 2 just to show you. You can of course do more. So there we go. There we have all of our pieces, and now we put it all together here. So we need these pieces on the shorter side. So the one that goes underneath or that's closer to your neck. So there we're gonna do this little hook section, and then the other piece we're gonna go, I don't know how to call the 2 halves, but this wider little piece we're gonna do on this back side, and then we're gonna do a little stitch there. So I'm gonna do it by hand just to make sure it's easier to do. You could try it with a sewing machine, but I think it's gonna be a lot faster if we do it by hand. And that's it for that side. For the other side, we're gonna take this other little half, so the narrower piece, and we're gonna do, again, the same thing on the other half, so connect it here at the end. And you can of course do it on the fabric itself, or you can make it stick out like this a little bit. This depends on what style you want in the end, and if you have enough fabric or not. So here you're just gonna need a little bit of patience with the stitching, but it's pretty easy, and that's gonna be our last step for today. So when we do that, we're gonna have our finished bow tie. So here is our finished bow tie. I hope you guys like the way this looks. Let me know what you think in the comments. So I'm really satisfied. This was a really fast project, and I think it looks really, really neat. So I'm gonna show you here the front, and then I also wanna show you the back with our little hook mechanism. So you can see here I put 2 pieces in so that I can adjust the width depending on what I need or how tightly I want to wear it. So this is what we did today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of our videos, feel free to click on the subscribe button and the notification bell, and I'll see you in one of my next projects. Until then, have a great day. Bye!